nobody, and I mean nobody, is naturally good at roleplay. Sure, you get better after a crap ton of practice or experience in improv, theater, storytelling, but unfortunately we don't have that kind of time. And you know what? That's fine. For a while I thought that in order to have great roleplay and drama at the table, you needed to have players who are great at roleplay. Turns out it's the other way around. It's by having great roleplay systems in place that players become absolute roleplaying beasts. Because the best roleplay at the table comes from party chemistry, and chemistry can be engineered. And you get to cry in the shower after a game. So whether you're a player or a GM, I've got something for you. I designed a step-by-step system to create awesome party dynamics and make cool dramatic scenes pretty much inevitable. It covers stuff like how to create characters specifically designed to engage other players, how to establish the right dynamics between them, but also includes some slightly more weird stuff like a minigame of Assassin. I even put all of it into a worksheet. And I want to start with something maybe a tiny bit scary. Tell me, how do you like PvP? Before you decide to burn me at the stake for mentioning PvP, hear me out. Whenever we hear PvP, we tend to immediately imagine players taking out their swords and hashing it out at each other battle royale style, which if that's your jam, slay, literally. But narratively, PvP actually encompasses a lot more than that. Secrets, betrayal, lying, rivalry, sure, but even stuff like inside checking each other. All these are things that place PCs in opposition with each other, and every group is going to want to play with different types of stories. So how about we create a PvP wishlist to determine together the parameters of our drama and conflict and possible heartbreak, if that's what you're into. I know I am. My favorite campaigns are in fact the ones that occasionally leave me crying in the shower. But while I'm very much a sucker for drama and I love scenes where emotions run high, I also have a bit of a preference for when we do so in a way that makes everyone at the table feel rejected. I guess you could kinda consider this a safety tool, but I like to think of it as the list I send to Santa to let him know exactly what kind of emotional damage I want for Christmas. So I give you the PvP wishlist. It's a simple framework for a conversation with the table about what kind of PvP we enjoy and look forward to, and which ones we maybe feel meh about. And it doesn't have to happen at session 0, you can have that shot anytime. Example. For this particular campaign, I don't love the idea of PCs pickpocketing each other. That's just not fun to me personally. However, keeping secrets and the PvP moves that players can do to try and uncover those secrets, that sounds fun. Like eavesdropping on each other during private conversations, or deceptions and insight checks against other PCs. Okay, lovely. But like concretely, what should that cover? Here's a little list of things you might want to address for your PvP wishlist. Keeping secrets, lying, manipulation, rivalry, jealousy, thieving, arguing, insults, eavesdropping, snooping through your stuff, investigating someone's past, mind reading, hashing it out in a fistfight, spreading rumors, injury, sabotage. So many fun things you can do to your friends in the game. However, the most important thing about the PvP wishlist lies in one subtlety. Sometimes it's not really a black or white kind of situation, but more of a spectrum. We're distinguished people, we understand nuance. Rather than limiting ourselves to a yes or no, the more interesting question to ask is, in what context do we enjoy each kind of PvP move? For example, maybe I personally don't love pickpocketing if it's just for the sake of making more money, but consider this situation. Say our totally original character that I totally just made up right now, let's name him Thorin Oakenshield. He's gotten his hands on a cute little gem. Let's call it, I don't know, the Arkenstone. But surprise! Turns out the stone is cursed and slowly making him mad. Another character, let's name him at random, Bilbo. In a desperate attempt to bring back his friend, decides to try and steal the stone from him. If I was Thorin's player, and now that I know that the stone is cursed, for some reason now I'm kinda okay with you stealing my although it's still thieving, so why does it feel different? I think because that's not conflict that's selfishly motivated. It's one that feeds the narrative. It's a tough decision to make for Bilbo, it creates a scene for Thorin, and it raises the stakes for the whole table. Okay, but what if you like thieving just for the sake of thieving? That's very fine. As long as the whole table is on the same page about it, go and steal my friend. Now before we move on to our next step, in which I expose my own selfishness, there's another even more important thing to ask for our PvP wishlist. Are there any PvP moves in there that we think should be discussed out of character before they happen? Or similarly, are there any that we'd rather keep a surprise? I know personally, if your character has been manipulating mine, I kinda like when the reveal is a surprise, but every group is gonna have different answers. And by discussing the context behind our PvP wishlist, we create drama with finesse and ensure that no one feels like the butt of the joke. Hello, my name is Val, and I have a problem. For many years, I have been creating my TTRPG characters selfishly. To be fair, I think many of us are, and it's not even on purpose. The way we've been taught, most TTRPG characters have been built to be interesting and fun to play. Sounds good, on paper. In practice, it's a different business. Try to think of the games you've been a player in. Among the other player characters, which ones were your favorite to play with? I don't know about you, but personally, it wasn't the ones that I could admire in silence because they were cool and badass. It was the ones that engaged me as a player because they interacted with me. I like being noticed and given attention. More than anything, TTRPG characters should be built for interaction. One of the best characters are the ones that make their environment interesting and are fun to play with. Basically, if a player character is a tree, then maybe we focus a bit less on the tree and more on the role it plays in the ecosystem. That might sound great in theory, but a little vague in practice, so let me give an example. This is Nunki, and he's one of my favorite characters that I've ever played ever. But most importantly, I think and I hope that he was fun for the other players to play with. He's an old were-raccoon in a Hawaiian shirt, kind of an Uncle Iroh kind of figure, who's just come out of retirement and is back into adventuring. But the reasons for that are very specific. His husband passed about a year before the start of the campaign, and he just can't be home on his own. He needs to keep himself busy. Come on, this is a backstory. Someone has to die or it's no fun. This is where the party comes in. They are perfect for him. Nunki needs purpose. He's got so much love to give and needs people to care for. And what's better than a group of youngins out adventuring? He can make sure they're okay, that they've got a good breakfast in them before tackling the day, patch them up after a fight, but mostly listen to what's troubling them and offer the best dad advice he can. Because he's desperate to feel needed, designing the character that way didn't just make it incredibly easy to engage other players, but inevitable. By checking in with other PCs, he'd create scenes and moments of spotlight for them. And I'm gonna take a moment to pause here, because this also sheds some light on something that is not nearly discussed enough in TTRPG. Way too often, we let it be the GM's job to engage players. And that's bull. That should be the whole table's responsibility. Players are also active storytellers at the table. Boo, hypocrite! What? Literally, you never think about that stuff in the middle of a game when you're a player. You're right, I don't, but that's the point. I wasn't lying when I said I'm a selfish role player. There's a lot of GMs who, when they're a player, kind of instinctively continue what they do as GMs. They keep an eye on the narrative, the pacing, who at the table hasn't talked in a while and needs to be engaged a little. I am not one of them. When I play, I get so absorbed that I absolutely forget to keep track of the vibes. I just want to devour the game. And I found it's really hard to keep policing myself on that, and probably would mess with my enjoyment of the game anyway. That's why this works. If I can counterbalance my selfish player tendency with non-selfish character design, I don't have to actively remind myself to engage others. It just happens naturally because it's baked into my character concept. This doesn't have to happen at character creation. You can always refine your character concept throughout the campaign. So how do we create characters like that? I think there's really just two important questions to ask, and they're based off something very, very wise that one of my first GMs told me. Why a character would want to stay with the party, but also why the party would want to stay with them. Let's say you have Bob the human fighter. His goals might have nothing to do with the party, like seeking vengeance for your dead dad. Because again, it's a backstory, it's always pretty neat if someone dies. But he should have reasons for choosing to accomplish this goal with the party, and ideally, these reasons should be emotional. So like beyond just needing more firepower, what if Bob the human fighter was also a drinker and victim to bouts of hopelessness that he needs distraction from, and that perhaps a party could help with? Congratulations, you've just created Inigo Montoya, one of the most beloved fantasy characters of all time. Now we think of what role Inigo plays for the party. While he may himself be plagued by hopelessness, Inigo is always the person who's going to put up the most optimistic front for everyone else, giving them pep talks, hyping them up, encouraging them to see the silver lining that he sees for everyone but himself. And to be clear, this is all relatively wholesome, but a character doesn't have to be wholesome. Their motivations can be a little more sus, like they've been raised in a way that makes them distrustful, so they always make sure they have dirt on everyone else, just in case. There's a variety of ways you could create direction for yourself to interact with the rest of the party and create sweet, sweet drama. And now all that's left for Inigo Montoya is to meet the lucky cast he gets to project his insecurities on. We've got pretty trees that are ready to be part of an ecosystem. Now we can create the root network between them, where they exchange nutrients and information and sappy emotional scenes. In a TTRPG, what carries the whole ecosystem when it comes to roleplay is relationships. Actually, that's built into the mechanics of minigame systems. First time I encountered it, it was for Monster of the Week, where each playbook has relationship prompts. I'm gonna show you some of these prompts and then tell you which one I think is meh for this specific purpose, and which one actually makes a good prompt for spicy, spicy drama. The playbook of the Cricket has prompts like these. This person is your cousin or relative. This person saved your life when a monster had the drop on you and now you owe them one. This person is your moral compass and their advice keeps you on the straight and narrow. Which ones do you think have the most potential for telenovela level drama? Let's see it in practice. Oh my dear friend, to whom I owe my life from that one fateful day. I don't know how I could ever repay you, but I am dedicated to trying. Oh my cousin, who I've seen like a couple of times at weddings and funerals over the charcuterie buffet. The best relationships to incentivize roleplay are the ones that focus on the dynamic between two characters. That's why I owe them my life and they're my moral compass. Work a tad better than this, my cousin. At least until you've fleshed out that cousin relationship a bit to know how that impacts your decision. And that means something great for our table. That these relationships don't need to be established at the beginning of the game but can be set at any time. Because the important thing about them isn't a shared backstory, it's the dynamic. To be honest, I can really tell the difference when I skip those practices. That's the case for a couple of the campaigns I'm in now, so I'm gonna rectify that. And here's how I'm gonna do it. I can go around the table and look at another PC and ask what dynamic do you envision between our two characters. They could have nothing to do with backstory, just how do you imagine these personalities will vibe together. Tropes are a treasure trove of inspiration for that, so you don't have to come up with it from scratch. Mentor and apprentice, best buds, star-crossed lovers, big sibling, little sibling, confidants, partners in crime, protector and protected, bantering buddies, kindred spirits, bromance, hero and sidekick, brawn and brains dynamic duo. You can also think the conflict route. I'm personally a sucker for cultures that are heels to each other. Rivals, golden retriever and black cat, pragmatic and boy scout, good cop, bad cop, by the book and loose cannon, brooding versus over-enthusiastic, cynic versus idealist, gentleman and scoundrel, sensitive versus tough. Figuring that out gives you immediately a framework for how you interact with another character. And all of a sudden, roleplay amongst yourselves becomes a whole lot more crunchy than just small talk about the weather and the dragon problem next town over. I know what you're gonna tell me though. Val, you're making it sound like it's all easy and obvious. But you kinda sound like a theater kid. And yes, I definitely have the vibes and the lack of career opportunities. But I'm also aware that that's not the case for every player. Some of them actually studied useful things in college, like business or accounting. And maybe given the choice, they'd rather just go to the next dungeon and beat up some goblins. What about them? And quick note, if that's the case, maybe let them? If a group isn't interested in crying in the shower after a game, they shouldn't be forced. Anyone can deliver great roleplay, but it doesn't mean anyone should be forced to. However, if you have the kind of group that has something dramatic and emotional itching to come to the surface, but it doesn't come naturally to them yet, then they might need a little help, we can give them some incentives. And I'm talking real mechanical incentives, because when starting out, a little structure can be so helpful. It could even become a minigame. So, do you know any assassins? Sorry, do you know the game Assassin? It's a pilot game that's played at parties or in stuff like summer camp. Each player is given a secret mission relative to another player character. For example, you gotta place an object in Mark's bag without being seen, or get Annie to say the words Cthulhu. Once you accomplish your mission, that player is eliminated, and you inherit their mission until there's one person left in the game. What if we made that little game into a mini game within our game, Gameception? But because this is a TTRPG, we're not trying to eliminate anyone, we're trying to set roleplay goals. And it doesn't have to be secret missions, but I think it's even more fun if it is secret. A little paranoia is always fun. In this version, you set yourself 2 missions at the beginning of the game. Ideally, these are missions that could create moments and spotlight for the character. Here's a few examples. Gain X's trust, find out what they're hiding about Y, create a shared memory with X, get X to forgive me about Y, learn X's biggest fear, receive a big compliment from X, have X lean on me in a difficult moment, get X to respect me as an equal, learn one of X's childhood memories. And once you accomplish that goal, you reveal that this was your secret mission. And you get a little reward. Maybe inspiration if you play D&D, or marking experience for PBTA game, or for Call of Cthulhu, maybe regaining some sanity, or whatever incentive seems appropriate to your group. And once you mark a mission complete, you can decide on your next mission, and the soap opera cycle keeps turning and turning. It has been brought to my attention, however, that with all this I may have put some groups and players in a bit of a pickle, specifically the ones who don't like spoilers, and kind of prefer character concepts to be kept a surprise to be revealed in the first session. Which is valid, but also sometimes can create a situation where we all meet in a tavern for the first time and have literally nothing to talk about. So does that mean you're excluded from the wonderful world of getting stabbed in your make-believe heart? I know there's a way you can both pick your poison and eat it too. Rumors. I wish I could claim the credit, but that came from a video that someone made that my friend saw and told me about. I don't know who, but if you know who, please bring them to me. Alive. Basically, instead of sharing culture concepts before the start of the game, you can privately send each player a rumor about your character. And that rumor doesn't have to be true, or it can be only partly true. That's to be found out in-game. And actually, it doesn't even have to be a rumor about a character. It can also be a first impression or a detail that another PC notices when you first meet. Let's see some examples. I heard Melon Ashley got expelled from his professor job at the wizard school. It was a whole thing. Something happened and now he's forbidden from teaching in the whole district. conflict. Or, I heard Ryan was the only survivor in his whole unit, but like nobody knows what happened out there. Or, wait, I've seen that person before. I passed by their wagon the other day and it was spray painted with the word traitor. As for examples of first impressions, here you go. When you first meet, you notice that they keep looking over their shoulder a bit nervously, like they're paranoid about something, or as if they're suspecting that someone might be following them. Or, this person keeps reaching for their bag protectively, occasionally looking into it, as if they're checking for something and making sure it's still there, way too often. If you were paying attention, you might have noticed that all of these examples have something in common. Just like the relationship prompts we talked about earlier, not all rumors and first impressions have the same potential for spicy roleplay. Ideally, a good rumor of first impressions should be creating some kind of mystery, some unanswered question, something specific enough to feel real, but incomplete enough to create intrigue. And using rumors and first impressions is great for two main reasons. The first one is that even without knowing someone else's character concept, it immediately gives you some direction to interact with them when first session rolls around. You contrast the information you got with the biases and prejudices of your own character. How would they react to someone who might be followed and therefore by extension might be following you? Or how would they react to someone who's been portrayed as an underdog? This gives you an inherent framework to color your first interactions, and you're not roleplaying in a vacuum. But the second thing about this that I find even more interesting is when everyone receives a different rumor, because that's actually a very easy cheat code that I use as a GM to get my players to bite more easily on some of my plot hooks. When someone is given a piece of information that only they know, it feels a bit special to that player, and they tend to be more likely to want to uncover that secret. Everything so far has been about setting up dynamics, but that means as the story progresses, all this setup is bound to have a payoff. Relationships and dynamics don't stay the same throughout a campaign, they progress and evolve. So how do we ensure that our relationships evolve? How do we set up the next season of our telenovela? Best way to make that happen is to kind of scatter some check-ins throughout the campaign, which after reaching a certain milestone, which that's your payoff from what you've established earlier and where this dynamic took you, then you chat with other players and kind of refresh each other on where you think your PC's relationship is at. And when I say milestone, there's a subtlety. We're used to thinking of milestones as big beats in the campaign relative to the plot, when we just saved the village or we just finished defeating that big bad evil guy. Those are not the milestones I'm talking about. While these big plot events can trigger a big change in a character's arc, those are just plot milestones. We can introduce the concept of relational and individual milestones, as in big moments of growth and change in a character or a relationship's arc, because these don't always align with whether the big bad has been defeated or not. And since that sounds a little vague, let me give you some conditions that when triggered, you know it's probably a good time to refresh your relationships. Some relational milestones could be when you've gained a new understanding of each other, when a big secret has come to light, when something has been done by one that was felt like a betrayal by the other, always felt as a proof of caring or a big act of protection, when you've just realized something new about how you feel about this person. And if you're using the game of Assassin from earlier, a lot of your missions once accomplished could form relational milestones, and some individual milestones could be when something about your vision of the world has been shattered, when your perception of yourself has entirely shifted, when something big about yourself has come to light, when you suddenly find yourself in a position of great vulnerability or great power, when an important personal goal has come to completion. Now that you know when you've reached a milestone, you just need to ask yourself two questions. First, how does this event change the way my character sees this other person? And really, this will be a case-by-case basis. But by that point, you should have enough context to make an educated guess. And maybe the more interesting question is, how does that inform the way you now interact with them? That's where roleplay happens. It doesn't live just inside your heads, it's expressed in your character's words and actions. For example, remember one of the dynamics we mentioned earlier? By the book and wildcard? While they've always been a disagreement about their methods, the wildcard character just did something that saved By the Book guy from great danger. Maybe now they loosen up a bit, stop starting arguments, and maybe even start to come to them for advice. Or maybe it's expressed in a complete different way, like now they have something to prove. That way wildcard guy can stop lording it over them. And there, you've just set up the next season of your telenovela. Will By the Book guy succeed to reclaim his place as the party know-it-all? Will wildcard finally get the recognition they deserve? Tune in next week and find out. God, that sounds like a lot. But worry not, you don't have to do all of these steps. Honestly, just pick a couple that you like and you think makes sense for your group. Just one of these is already going to change something at your table. If you do all of them, you're just hardcore. Do you take new players? But because I also just threw a massive amount of stuff at you, I did the responsible thing and I wrote it all down into a neatly structured worksheet with examples and prompts. So that way, if you kind of want someone to hold your hand through it, all you have to do sometimes is just tick some boxes and fill in some blank spaces. Whether whether you do this with your group or just on your own. Because yeah, you can also just use this by yourself as a player to get some ideas on how to be a more active storyteller at the table, learn to engage other players, and become everyone's favorite princess. And then you can teach them the ways of the elusive arcane that is drama. You can find the worksheet on Patreon in the link down there, where you might find some more fun stuff, Discord access and live stream hangouts, or sometimes it's very polished things like puzzles ready to plug into your game, but sometimes it's just me in my pajamas yapping about TTRPG, or bloopers involving whatever this is. So our relationship can evolve as you see me unscripted and slowly lose all the steam you had for me. Oh, and because the channel is turning 3 years old this month, till the end of the week there's like up to 40% discount on Patreon, so maybe go check it out. Anyways, and on this note, have a good evening, and when you cry in the shower, remember that you brought this upon yourself.